श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् लक्ष्मीनाथसमारम्भाम् नाथयामुनमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्ताम् वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् यो नित्यम् अच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः।
श्रीशैलेशदयापात्रम् धीभक्त्यादिगुणार्णवम् यतीन्द्रप्रवणम् वन्दे रम्यजामातरम् मुनिम् यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुक्मव्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणम् प्रपद्ये लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्दष्टजीवजीवातवे नमः. As usual, we continue with the exposition of the Mumuksupadi. Uttaram unnadiyar kadimai engayare idile bhagavata sheshattam anusandheyam ippadattile tadiya sheshattam arthamaha anusandheyam engayare areyarudichchihirat uttaram enne todangi திருவெட்டெழுத்தங்கத்துனான் உத்தரும் உன்னடியார் கிடுமை என்று திருமந்திரங்கத்தால் நான் உத்தரும் உன்னடியார் கிடுமை என்னும் இவ்வர்த்தத்திலே என்கிறபடியே அகங்கார மமகாரங்கள் நிவர்த்தமாய் பகவச்சேஷத்துவம் உள்ளபடி பிரகாசிக்கிற விண்ணமசிலே தற்காஷ்டையான பாகவத சேஷத்துவம் அனுசந்திக்க வேணும் என்கை. What is the aspect that is being mentioned here? The aspect that just as the soul, individual soul or Jivatma, is subservient to the Supreme Lord, it is also understood that he is subservient to the devotees of the Supreme Lord also. This is the literal meaning of the sutra. That means not only is he subservient to the Supreme Lord, but he is subservient to all those who are his devotees. So that is what Tirumangayalvar says in one of his psalms, where he says, having learned the meaning of the Ashtakshara Mahamantra, I have understood or realized that I am subservient to all your devotees. So this subservience to the devotees of the Supreme Lord is a very unique aspect of Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. This is to be understood in great length. I will not explain in that detail, but in not too many words, not too less words. So according to, there is a anecdote, I don't know whether you have heard about it or not. So there was a student who first went to an Advaita Acharya, or an Acharya who was preaching the philosophy of Advaita. Keshava Swami, have you heard this? I think you may have heard this anecdote. You can tell me later. So this devotee went to the Advaita Acharya and asked him, how should I worship the Supreme Lord? What should I do to attain moksha? So he said, he told him. So there is a chant called Soham. Always chant, continuously chant this. It's not the mantra, of course. It's a saying, let us say. Soham, 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 Saha, Aham. That means I am he, or he is what I am. So I am not different from him. I am the Supreme Brahman. So he was chanting continuously. He was what we could call as Anusandhana, not even chanting. So that is, there is a difference between chanting and what we call as Anusandhana. So in our mind, if you always keep, for example, Om Namo Narayana, I don't outwardly chant it. I'll just keep repeating to myself, which is known as Anusandhana in Sanskrit. Om Namo Narayana. So just for you to tell, I'm telling like that. If I do like that, continuously without informing anybody, continuously in my mind I do that. Because Ramanujacharya, in his Gadyatraya, the great work called Gadyatraya in the Sharanagati Gadya, which is the first of the three Gadya works uttered by Ramanujacharya. I have to speak at great length on this because this is the only work probably in entire Sanskrit literature. Of course, you have Bhagavad Gita and other things where Krishna was the direct incarnation of the Lord and he had a dialogue with Arjuna, or Arjuna had a dialogue with Krishna. That is probably in the physical realm itself. But here we have a unique piece of literature where there was a direct dialogue between the Supreme Lord and who was there in the form of Ranganatha and Acharya Ramanuja, where they have a conversation in real time actually. So when Ramanujacharya performs surrender at the Sharanagati at the feet of Lord Ranganatha, he finally asks him what should he do. Then it seems Lord Ranganatha told him. But how the conversation, how the dialogue occurred, this is a very difficult thing to understand for ordinary people like us. So he said, Dvayam arthanusandhanena saha sada evam vakta yavat charirapatam matraiva shrirange sukhamasva. Finally, when he asked, now I have surrendered, I have given up all my bharas, or I have given up all my responsibilities and I have put them under your feet, so I have nothing to do hereafter, what should I do? Then the Lord commanded Ramanujacharya when he said, Dvayam arthanusandhanena saha sada evam vakta. Continuously chant the Dvaya mantra along with the anusandhana of its meaning, along with the continuous realization or continuous recapitulation of the meaning of the mantra. Continuously you keep chanting it and you be here in Srirangam until you leave this mortal coil. Yavat charirapatam atraiva Srirange sukhamasva. So you spend your remaining days here in Srirangam until you leave your mortal coil. Yavat charirapatam, until you leave this body. By continuously chanting the mantra, always chanting the mantra along with the anusandhana of its meaning. Not simply chanting, but together with the going over and over again internally of the meaning of the Dvaya. So that is one aspect. Then secondly, when you talk about the Bhagavata Sheshatva, in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, we talk about what is known as Sapta Parvadasya. So I'm sure you would be, I came to mention that story. So he was mentioning the Advaita Acharya told, just go keep on doing the Anusandhana, so hum, etc. Then the disciple went to another Acharya who belonged to the Sri Vaishnava tradition. And he said, Swami, please give me instruction or upadesha, what should I do to attain moksha? He said, already are you familiar with some upaya? Or are you already familiar with some means? Then he said, then the disciple said, yes, I went to such an acharya. He said, please continuously do anusandhana of this soham. Then the Sri Vaishnava Acharya said, what he is told is very, very much correct. But you have to add a small letter in the sense, one letter you have to add to this and do the Anusandhana. What is that? So he has told Soham. You add one da to it and do it as da Soham. So hereafter what he has told is correct, but do it as da Soham, da Soham, da Soham, da Soham, da Soham, da Soham. So I am the servant of the Lord. Then after some time he met the Advaita Acharya once again. He said, the Advaita Acharya asked, how is your spiritual progress? Are you doing the Anusandhana of what I told? Then the disciple said, yes, Swami, I am doing what you told. But in the meanwhile, I met the Sri Vaishnava Acharya. He said, add one da to it and do the Anusandhana. So I am doing da soham now. And the Advaita Acharya said, fine, that is also very good. But you add one more alphabet. You add one sa to this and say sada soham. Always I am him. I am the Supreme Lord. Do it now like this. And the disciple said, fine, I will do it. So he started doing sada soham, sada soham, sada soham, sada soham. Then once again he came in contact with the Sri Vaishnava Acharya. He said, how is your spiritual progress? He said, Swami, I was doing what you told. In the meanwhile, I met my previous Acharya. Then I told him what had happened. He said, what you had told, he asked me to add one more word called sa. So what I am doing now is the chanting of Anusandhana Sadasva. Then the Sri Vaishnava Acharya said, yes, what he is told is correct. But you add one more syllable. Now that you have added so many syllables, there is nothing wrong in one more syllable. You add one more da to it. So it becomes dasa dasoham. I am the servant of the Lord. So this is how he chanted and attained salvation. That's what we understand from the anecdote. So what Kulashekara Alvar says in this Mukundamala, I think Mukundamala all of you know. Or if you don't know, then it is the most best stotra or propitiatory verse of the Supreme Lord by any means, by any measures. You have to learn it without fail because it captures the entire essence of our spiritual path, what we are, what is the Supreme Lord, etc. And the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the individual soul, etc. So there he says, Tadbhritya Bhritya Paricharaka Bhritya Bhritya Bhrityasya Bhritya Itimam Smaralokanatha. So just remember me as the servant of your servant. So in Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, we call it as Saptaparva Dasya, or the seventh level of Dasya, servitude or servanthood, however you would like to call it. So even Nammalvar says, Adiyar, Adiyar, Tam Adiyar, 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 Tamak Adiyar, Adiyar, Tami. So Saptaparva Dasya is mentioned by Kulashekara Alvar in his Mukundamala Divya Prabandha. And it is also mentioned in the Thiruvaimozhi of Nammal. So this is the essence of Sri Vaishnava philosophy, that how many ever levels of Dasya we say, it's not about. So even the 1000th level of Dasya is acceptable to the Sri Vaishnava. The more and more he evolves, the more and more he feels himself that he is lowest of the low, as far as the Dasya is concerned, or servitude to the Supreme Lord's devotees is concerned. That is why we have a word called Charamavadhi Dasa Dasaha. Charamavadhi Dasa means the final Dasya that can never be, once again, there is no further servant to him. He is the final servant. He is of the lowest. So my Acharya used to say, there are two ways in a very, I don't know whether to use that word, in a very secular manner and a very universal manner. It appeals to all people irrespective of our sampradaya. There are two ways of attaining moksha. One is you reduce the status of your Atma, go on reducing the status of your Atma that it ultimately it becomes so, it is atomic, subatomic, subatomic. But ultimately that Atma loses its existence altogether, or loses its identity altogether. Or you make it grow big, and it becomes so huge that it cannot grow bigger, so it becomes almost identical to the Supreme. So these are the only two ways. Either you reduce yourself totally to a non-entity, or you expand yourself to a universal entity. These are the two ways of doing it. The expanding yourself totally to become a universal entity is the Jnana Marga, which is very difficult. So Ramanujacharya doesn't mention it at all. He in many places, he doesn't even take that into account, though he accepts it in some forums. So Bhakti Marga is you reduce your Atma to such a level that it almost becomes non-existent. So this is what is Sapta Parvadasya or Saramadhidasa or something. But here he just talks about the Bhagavata Sheshatva. You become subservient to the devotees of the Lord also automatically. Because the Lord, so it's like there is a big boss like Bill Gates or somebody, let us say. I don't like taking these names, but just for easy understanding, I'm telling some billionaire. So a person wants to gain his favor. So he starts serving his wife or his paramour or whatever it is, whom he loves more than he himself. Then what happens? If the rich man will become happy if the person who is serving him, that is the rich man himself, in a very nice manner, he will give him so many favors. But suppose this person is serving his wife or paramour or lover or whoever it is, and she recommends to him, I think he is a very nice person, you have to do something for him. Immediately it will get done. So this is true with regard to the Supreme Lord also. So he will listen to the words of Goddess Mahalakshmi immediately rather than actually he showers his grace on the persons who worship Goddess Lakshmi or his devotees because he loves them so much. But there is a difference between a human being, an ordinary human being, a rich man, giving or honoring his lover's words, than the Supreme Lord honoring the words of Goddess Mahalakshmi or his devotees. So both of them should not be equated. Many times, some acharyas during their discourses, they equate the love of the Supreme Lord and Goddess Mahalakshmi with ordinary love that we have in our worldly situations or scenarios. This is totally incorrect. My acharya used to say that. Though there are several instances like wherein our Purvacharyas say that the Supreme Lord is totally controlled by Goddess Mahalakshmi. And he has no independence at all when he is commanded to do something by Goddess Mahalakshmi. It is true. And it is equated with Equated in the sense they give an analogy where a person, a male who is very powerful, listens to what his wife says or what his lover, beloved says. But when it is an ordinary human being who is enamored of his beloved, it is on account of some worldly sensual pleasures which he derives from his wife or beloved, and therefore he listens to him. But this relationship, this what we call filial love or some relationship, whatever we call it, of an ordinary human being with his wife, so equating it or even comparing it with the love or affection or the relationship between the Lord and his beloved goddess Mahalakshmi is totally incongruous. It may be mentioned only for us to get an inclination of what it is, but we should understand it in a very careful manner. Because even in the Ramayana, there is a conversation between Sugriva and Rama. So Lord Rama, who is supposed to be the incarnation, I am telling supposed to be, is until the killing of Ravana happens. Rama says, Atmanam Manusham Manye Ramam Dasharatha. When Brahma and others come and they worship Rama and propitiate him, he says, I don't know who I am. I think I am an ordinary human being called Rama, who is the son of Dasharatha. Koham kasya kuto aham bhagavam stat bravitu. And he says, Lord Brahma, who am I? From where I have come, how I have come, etc. You have to tell me. Then there is a beautiful eulogy by Lord Brahma when he says, Sita Lakshmi Bhavan Vishnu. You are none other than Lord Vishnu and Sita is none other than Goddess Lakshmi. And you have come here to protect all of us and rid the world of adharma by killing Ravana and Kumbhaka. So, when Rama actually is so sad about losing his wife Sita, who was abducted by Ravana, then Sugriva says, even I have lost my wife. Vali has abducted her. My own brother Vali has abducted her. But I am not as sad as you are. Why do you feel so sad? And Rama avoids giving a direct reply. So, what is the reason here? One very important aspect. My Acharya used to tell this in a very beautiful manner. He used to say, it's not what we call as filial love or some purely sensual bodily relationship that is responsible for Rama weeping or becoming sad or whatever it is with regard to his losing Sita. Because their relationship is divine. That is why Sita says to Ravana, Ananya Bhaskarenam, Ananya Raghavenam, Bhaskarena Prabhayata. Just as the sun and his orb cannot be separated, we both are inseparable. So it's not the bodily relationship that is the cause of their unique divine love. It is something otherworldly which we cannot understand in an ordinary sense. So this is one very important aspect. So here what Vidalokacharya says is, உத்தரம் உன்னடியார் கடிமை என்றையாலே இதிலே பாகவத சேஷத்துவம் சொல்லித்து. So this is understood or it is implied when we say that the Supreme, the Jivatma is subservient to the Supreme Lord. It also means, it also suffices to say that this Jivatma is subservient to the devotees of the Lord also. So this is the purport of this sutra. Ippadi arthama, I think we have already covered this. இப்படி ஆர்த்தமாக அனுசந்திக்கப்படும் பாகவத சேஷத்துவம் தான் இந்நமசிலன்னிக்கே ஸ்தலாந்தரங்களிலே சொல்லுவார் உண்டாகையாலே இத்தையருளிச் செய்கிறார். இது அகாரத்திலே என்னும் சொல்லுவர்கள், உகாரத்திலே என்னும் சொல்லுவர்கள் என்று. அதாவது சதுர்த்தியாலே ஆத்மாவினுடைய பகவத் சேஷத்துவத்தை சொல்லுகையாலே பகவத் சேஷத்துவ காஷ்டையான இந்த பாகவத சேஷத்துவானுசந்தானம் அகாரத்திலே என்னும் சிலர் சொல்லுவர்கள். அனன்யார்ஹ சேஷத்துவத்துக்கு எல்லை தடிய சேஷத்துவ பரியந்தமாக நிற்கையாலே அனன்யார்ஹத்துவ பிரதிபாலகத்துவமான உகாரத்திலே என்னும் சிலர் சொல்லுவர்கள் எந்தை. ஆர்த்தமாகையாலே அவ்வவ ஸ்தலங்களிலும் சொல்லலாயிருந்ததே ஆகினும் கந்தல் கழிந்த விடத்திலே சொல்லுகையே உச்சிதம் என்று கருத்து. So the aspect that this Jivatma is subservient to the Supreme Lord is conveyed to us as an implied meaning. So in Sanskrit, we talk about different levels of meaning. I have explained one instance in the earlier session. Another very ordinary ordinary example is, so there was one person was living on a terrace, and he was having food, etc. You have food on a terrace when it's very cool and things like that. So he was about to have food, and he had procured some very tasty curds. And he was about to have food, so he wanted to bring some more groceries, etc. So he had kept the curd on the terrace, and he told his relative who was staying nearby, was present there, please protect the curds from the crows, because there are a lot of crows in the area. So please protect the curds from the crows. Kakebhyo radhirakshata. So then suddenly what happened? A few cats came there, and cats are also fond of curds. So then he warded off the cats also from them consuming the curds. So that means when you say please protect the curds from the crows, not only the crows but any animal that will actually partake of the curds and actually spoil its nature. Because according to Indian tradition, you should not eat the leftover. It is called as uchishta of animals. Of course, even others, leftovers or echal we call it, of other human beings also, unless he is an acharya or elderly person. So here you have to take the intention of the meaning, word meaning. Protect the cow curds from the crows means also protect the cow curds from any animal that will actually spoil the nature of the curds by partaking. So here also it is mentioned when you say Bhagavat Sheshatva, Bhagavata Sheshatva is implied. Then the question comes, how do you, from which component of the word Namaha is this mentioned? Or even in Om, Akara, Ukara, Makara, where is this conveyed? From which component is the Bhagavata Sheshatva aspect? It is subservient to the devotees of the Supreme Lord conveyed. So for that he says, Pidalokacharya says, the Akarattile innum solluvargal, Ukarattile innum solluvargal. Some people are of the opinion that this is conveyed by the Akara itself, while others are of the opinion that this is conveyed by the Ukara. Both of these are components of the word Om. So that is what he says here. And then Swami Manavada Bhavani in his commentary says, don't worry about this thing, it's not a big issue. As far as you accept that it is conveyed, subservient to the devotees of the Supreme Lord, subservience of the individual soul to the Supreme Lord is conveyed. Let us go with it. Let us not worry too much about which component conveys this particular meaning. Ultimately, it is the fruits that we are interested in rather than it is the end we are interested rather than the means in this context. Then, இன்னமஸ்துக்கு பூர்வத்தில் பிறந்த பிரதிபத்தியை பத்த இதில் பிறந்த பிரதிபத்திக்குண்டான வாசியை அருளி செய்கிறார். ஈஸ்வரன் தனக்கேயா இருக்கும் என்னே. ஈஸ்வரன் தனக்கேயா இருக்கும், அஜித்து பிறர்க்கேயா இருக்கும், ஆத்மா தனக்கும் பிறர்க்கும் பொதுவாயிருக்கும் என்று முற்பட்ட நினைவே. அங்கனன்னிக்கே அச்சித்தை போலே தனக்கேயாக எனைக்கொள்ள வேணும் என்கிறது நமசால். So one very important concept of Shri Vaishnava Sampradaya is conveyed in this sutra. So now I will ask you a question. I don't think the translation is very apt here. It doesn't capture the essence as far as I can see. So now I will slightly give a more better explanation, I suppose. So now I am asking, here is a pencil in front of me. So for the sake of whom does this exist? The answer is, since I am the owner of this pencil, I have bought it by paying 5 rupees or 10 rupees. This exists for my pleasure. This exists purely for my sake. The pencil does not have an agenda of its own because it is an achit vastu or an insentient being. So this is an insentient entity which does not have any life. So suppose I break it into 2 pieces like this, it will not ask me, why did you break it? Or I write a beautiful picture with it, it doesn't ask me, why you did this. Even if I do something derogatory using this, it will not ask me, why did you use this for this purpose. So such entities like achit, so these are the achit vastu. Vastus are insentient entities. These exist solely for the sake of others. They do not have any agenda of their own. They do not have any particular purpose of their own, why I should exist, etc. Because there is no consciousness called I consciousness or Chaitanya in this. Similarly, we have out of the 3 tattvas, that is Chit, Achit and Ishvara. So these are the Achit Vastus which do not have any particular aim or objective in their life because they do not have Chaitanya or consciousness at all. Whereas this Jivatma which is existing in the body of each person. So Jivatma means Keshavadas Jivatma, my Jivatma, Govindacharya's Jivatma, Sundar Gopal's Jivatma. So all the persons Jivatma. There are millions of such individual souls, millions or billions, you can keep it, or trillions also. So this Jivatma, suppose now you ask, what is it? You say that you ask a lay person who is going on the road. So in English we refer to them as Tom, Dick and Harry. So you ask a Tom, Dick and Harry. In Sanskrit we call them as Devadatta, Yajnadatta or something like that. So an ordinary lay person is referred to as Tom, Dick and Harry in English parlance. In Sanskrit we say Devadatta, Yajnadatta, etc. Chaitraha, Maitraha, etc. So he says, For whom do you live? For the sake of whom do you live? You will say, I am living for myself. Or even if you ask me when I am not teaching the Mumuksupadi or something like that, in a very, very general sense, why are you doing this? Or I want to do it for myself. I will say. So I will say, when I don't, probably until I have that realization that I am totally subservient to the Supreme Lord, even a person like me will say, I am here for my pleasure, for my sake. I have this body, I want to enjoy the pleasures of life. I want to be happy, etc. But is this correct? Ultimately, it is not correct because I don't have the realization that I am subservient to the Supreme Lord. But what about the Supreme Lord? It is true, totally true, and in the fitness of things that he exists for his own sake and not for the sake of anybody else. So, two things are for sure. Achit entities or insentient entities like this exist for the sake of others only, for the pleasures of others only. They do not have any individual agenda on their own, of their own, on their own, etc. This is for sure. Similarly, with regard to the Supreme Lord, he exists for his own sake, for his own pleasure, his own enjoyment, etc. That is also for sure. But the problem is with the Jivatma or the conscious entities like us. Are we here for our own sake or are we here for the sake of the Supreme Lord? So that is what he says in this context. Piladokacharya says, Ishwaran tanakkeya irikkum. The Supreme Lord is for the sake of himself only. Achit pirarkeya irikkum. The Achit Vastu or insentient entities are for the sake of others only. Atma. What about the Atma? Atma tanakkum pirarkum poduvairikkum endru mutpattaninave. So, as far as the Jivatma is concerned, there are two options. Either he is here for the sake of himself, or he is here for the sake of the Supreme Lord. But Anganannike achittaipore tanakkeya enikkullavenum engirathu namassal. But as far as a realized soul is concerned, what he says is, he requests the Supreme Lord to consider himself just as an Achit Vastu. So I consider this as totally subservient to me. I can do whatever I want with this regard to this pencil. Nobody will ask me, nobody will question. Because it is mine. It belongs to me. Nobody can question what I do with it. Similarly, this Jivatma, who is a supreme realized soul, will say, Oh Lord, please consider me to be an Achit Vastu like this. And do whatever you want with this Jivatma or individual soul. That is what is the meaning or essence of the word Namaha. So we call it as Achidvat Paratantriya or Jadavat Paratantriya in Sri Vaishnava parlance. Total subservience as is present in an insentient entity. So what we do by the word Namaha, Namaha, Namaha is, we request the Supreme Lord, please consider me to be your wholesome property, just as you consider an ordinary insentient entity. Because I have no subsistence of my own. I have no aims or objectives of my own. My only objective is to be of service to you, of being Shesha or subservient to you. That is what is the essence of the word Namaha. And then he says, அதாவது ஈஸ்வரன் போகதசையில் ஈஸ்வரன் அழிக்கும் போது நோக்குமென்று அழியாதொழிகை அழிக்கைக்கு ஹேது கீழே சொல்லித்து மேலும் சொல்லும் இந்நினைவு பிறந்த போலே கிருதகிருத்தியம் நினைவில்லாத போது எல்லா துஷ்கிருத்தங்களும் கிருதம். There is one very important concept. I will mention the concept and explain the verses of the Mumuksupadi later. One very beautiful concept that is discussed in the Sri Vaishnava literature is what is known as Swagata Svikara and Paragata Svikara. Have you heard about these two terms, Keshadas ji? I am sure you would have heard about it. So Swagata Svikara and Paragata Svikara. This is very important concept which is mentioned in the Bhagavad Vishayam or the commentaries of Tiruvayamuli. So Nammalvar, he actually pleads with the Lord. The Tiruvayamuli itself is known as Dirgha Sharanagati. 1102 stanzas of wonderful divine literature, totally dedicated to the devotion of the Supreme Lord and nothing else. Of course, in the course of that, thousands of wonderful concepts related to bhakti, the path of bhakti are mentioned. That's a different issue. But overall, if you ask what is the purport of the entire Tiruvayamuli, it is known as Dirgha Sharanagati. An extended Sharanagati or an extended treatise of surrender, of the process of surrender unto the Supreme Lord. That is why it is known as Dirgha Sharanagati. So in that there is a huge, vast amount of conversation between the Supreme Lord. So once Nammalvar asks, please take me to your abode Vaikuntha. Grant this Jivatma the abode, your permanent abode of Vaikuntha. I want nothing else. Give it to me immediately. Because I don't want to stay in this material world even for one more moment. Then the Lord says, yes, we have given it. We have bestowed the abode of Vaikuntha to you. You are free to come whenever you want to come. Then Nammalvar asks, he retorts rather, for the sake of whom have you given it? Is it because I am pleading to come to Vaikuntha and serve you that you have promised me the abode of Vaikuntha? Or is it because you feel happy by my coming there to serve you that you have given me Vaikuntha? So I will give a small example. So in India, we have what we call as the servant maids. They call it as domestic help in India. And I am sure even in West, some people will be having maids to do their housework, like cleaning the house and washing the clothes and utensils, etc. So suppose the maid doesn't come one day. She says, I have to go for some other work. The lady of the house will become upset. She says, how much work I can do? So I cannot do all the cleaning. I cannot do sweep the house, mop the house, and wash all the utensils. So she will feel extremely disturbed. So she says, unless the maid comes and does her work, I will not feel happy. So she allows the maid to do all the work, which is a form of a service. Because the lady of the house, who is the owner of the house, wants it to be done, so she feels happy that the house is clean and fit to live in. So it is the lady of the house appoints a servant maid who comes to the house of the lady and performs all types of servitude. So, though she is compensated with some money, ultimately the lady of the house, the owner of the house becomes happy. The servant gets some money, servant maid gets some money, and she is also happy. That's it. So, Nammalvar asks the Lord, did you promise me your abode of Vaikuntha just because I am asking for it? Oh, this Nammalvar is a very ordinary person. He is a person who has been pleading with me. He has been begging me to admit him to Vaikuntha. Okay, he is being begging so for so long, so let me admit him. If you are admitting me to your abode with this mentality, then I will not come. On the other hand, if you feel that by the presence of Nammalvar, the Atma of Nammalvar in Vaikuntha, I will become happier. I enjoyed being served by him. If you feel so, then I am ready to come to Vaikuntha. So this is known, this is what Nammalvar says, and then of course, ultimately the Lord says, I am more happier than you. And the example given is when a prodigal son, Deshantaragatanana putran takkaline itra hridayam kidakkuma pole. So a father has 6 or 7 sons. So except for one, all the other 5 or 6 sons are doing well. They are having a good family, they are having good income, and they are living a very comfortable life. One person is actually staying in a far-off land. He is undergoing a lot of difficulty due to various factors. Then what happens? The father, he is always thinking about the son who is in a far-off land, who is undergoing a lot of difficulty. Even though all his other sons are happy, he will not actually be happy on that account. He will be feeling bad just because one of his sons is staying in a far-off land undergoing a lot of difficulties. And then when that son also comes back and says, Father, I come and hereafter I will stay with you, I will be spending a lot of time with you and enjoying your company. Then what happens? The father is overjoyed. Say, oh my, that son has come back to me. So I am so happy, I have nothing else to ask for in this life. So the philosophical question that is raised here is, when the Jivatma attains the Supreme Lord by going to Vaikuntha, of course the Jivatma gains so much of pleasure, unsurpassed pleasure by going to Vaikuntha and serving the Lord. Is this pleasure more, or does the Lord attain more pleasure just because this Jivatma has come to Vaikuntha to serve him? Which pleasure is higher of the two? So one school of thought says the Jivatma's pleasure is more than the Paramatma's pleasure. It is known as Paragata Svikara, Swagata Svikara. Whereas if the Supreme Lord grants the boon of moksha to the Jivatma, and he feels happy that this Jivatma also, who is in the form of, who is like a son to him, he comes back to serve him. And the pleasure of the Lord is more, then it is known as Paragata Svikara. So both the schools of thought are there. But ultimately it says, the Lord is more benefited by a Jivatma coming to his abode to serve him. So that is what Nammalvar says. If you are granting the abode of moksha to me for my pleasure, then I don't want that moksha. If, on the other hand, if my presence in Vaikuntha to serve you makes you more happy, then only I am ready to accept your offer of my coming to Vaikuntha. See how beautiful it is. And where else? Of course, every sampradaya, every other sampradaya we respect and we revere. But such nuances that occur in the path of bhakti, in the path of a devotee attaining the Supreme Lord, are not mentioned in any other sampradaya as far as I have seen, other than the Sri Vaishnava. So if you can point out such discussions, such unique and exalted concepts mentioned in any other sampradaya, I am open to accept the greatness of that sampradaya. But as far as I have heard and I have studied, such concepts are not discussed anywhere in any other sampradaya. I am sure about that, as far as my knowledge is. So, tanakkeya hayane kullumide. So, ultimate thing what has to happen is by our knowing, making the Lord know our subservience to Him, he should feel this Jivatma is so close to me that I will be overjoyed when he comes to Vaikuntha and starts serving me. With that intention, he should actually take us to the abode of Vaikuntha by granting us moksha. So, tanakkeyaha yane kullumide. That is what my Nammalvar says in this Purana. That is the ultimate, that is the best thing that can happen to this Jivatma. So this is what is mentioned in this context. In these words, I conclude today's session. Any observations or questions?
This concept that we are just like Achit, we're just like something inanimate object that is owned by the Supreme Lord. What does Vedanta Deshika say about this? Because doesn't he insist that the soul is a katra, is a doer, it has katritva, and therefore is a, in Vedantic terms, aren't some people objecting to this idea that we could consider the Jivatma Chit to be Achit, to be like Achit?
This is not discussed in the philosophical works like Sri Bhashyam, because it is more to do with the Sampradaya aspect. So it is Jadavat Paratantriya is accepted by Vedanta Deshika also. I don't think there is any difference of opinion in that sense. But it is not mentioned in the Shastraic works like Sri Bhashya, because it is not it's not the agenda of that work. As simple as that, according to me.
So we can understand
these are nuances. As a person progresses in the path of bhakti, these are very, very unique and subtle nuances that are there, that are encountered. So these do not come under the purview of works like Sri Bhashya.
So can we understand that Mumuksupadi and other works that are called Rahasya Granthas, the meaning of Rahasya Granthas also means that it is something which is taught only in-house, inside the Sampradaya, and not to be discussed with Advaitins and people who are outside the Sampradaya.
Because now when you discuss with other systems of Vedanta like Advaita or Dvaita, these things are not mentioned in the Vedic passages or other passages. Or even if they are mentioned, they may not be very specifically or very outwardly mentioned. So these are not to be subjected to debates. These are to be taken with a very, what do you call that, unquestioning mind actually. Because these things are, they are of such a huge, subtle, sentimental issue that these cannot be subjected to aspects of logic. So they do not come under the purview of any debate, etc. That is why, as you rightly mentioned, these are all Rahasya Granthas. These were not even committed to writing, but it is mentioned specifically in the Rahasya by Pandalokacharya, others, and etc. others. that there came a time of deterioration, so that is even 700 years back, that if these things may not be committed to writing in that time, they might be permanently lost. That is why they were committed to writing in these works.
So is this why we see many quotations coming from the Nalari Divya Prabandham from
Yes.
Alwar's works rather than
Yes.
coming from Vedantic works?
Yes, you're right.
But still, there may be some Shruti Pramanas for some of these ideas or not?
Yes, we may get, so we have to search from this point of view. But I am sure there are quite a few, which you have to search in a very deep and focused manner. There might be there in the Bhagavatam also, I am sure there might be something. I am not an expert in Bhagavatam like you, so probably you might have come across some verses. In fact, I want to study Bhagavatam more. I have only had a cursory look of Bhagavatam. So let us see. But I am sure, see, these are all, for example, even many nuances my Acharya used to tell me. In Harivamsha, we find out several instances that are not found in Bhagavatam. So it is considered to be a later addition, but still several wonderful things are mentioned in the Harivamsha also. It's considered an appendix to Bhagavatam.
To Mahabharata. Harivamsa is
Yes.
appendix to Mahabharata.
Yes.
So is it considered the same level of pramana as Mahabharata, as Itihasa?
No, that is why it's an appendix. So some people say it's not on the same level as Mahabharata. But that doesn't reduce its significance in any manner. See, when you are discussing with some other schools of thought, scholars of other schools of thought, then they may not consider it as pramana. But as a devotee, we consider it as of great value. So, any other questions? So, we conclude here. Thank you very much. चेद्रामानुजेत्येषा चतुरा चतुरक्षरी कामवस्थां प्रपद्यन्ते जन्तवो हन्तमादृश पुण्याम्भोजविकासाय पापध्वान्तक्षयाय च श्रीमानाविरभूद्भूमौ रामानुजदिवाकरः गुणीकृतविरिञ्चार्जनङ्कुशविभूतयः रामानुजपदाम्भोजसमाश्रयणशालिनः